Everyone thinks they know Zeus, the king of the gods, the guy with the lightning bolt, the most powerful being in the universe. He sits on a golden throne at the top of Mount Olympus, and when he speaks, the sky shakes. When he's angry, thunder rolls across the world. Every god bows to him. Every mortal fears him. He is the ultimate symbol of power. But here's the thing no one talks about. Zeus was terrified. His entire life, from the moment he was born to the moment he sat on that throne, was driven by one thing. Not courage, not wisdom, not justice, fear. And once you understand that, everything about him changes. Let's start at the beginning. Not the version you've heard, the clean one, the heroic one. Let's start with what actually happened. Zeus was born into a nightmare. His father was Cronus, the king of the Titans, the ruler of the entire universe. And Cronus had a problem. Someone had told him a prophecy. One day, one of your children will overthrow you, the same way you overthrew your own father. So Cronus came up with a solution, a horrifying one. Every time his wife Rhea gave birth, Cronus would take the baby, a newborn, still crying, still reaching for its mother, and he would swallow it whole, one by one. Hestia, Hades, Demeter, Poseidon, Hera. 5 children, 5 lives consumed before they even had a chance to begin. Think about that for a moment, not as mythology, as reality. A father so afraid of losing power that he destroys his own children. A mother who watches it happen 5 times, helpless, screaming, broken. By the time Rhea was pregnant with her 6th child, she had had enough. She hid. She found a cave on the island of Crete, dark, remote, forgotten by the world, and she gave birth in secret. Then she wrapped a stone in a blanket and handed it to Cronus. He swallowed it without looking. He didn't even notice. And that 6th child, the one who survived, was Zeus. But here's what the stories don't emphasize enough. Zeus didn't grow up on Olympus. He didn't grow up surrounded by power and luxury. He grew up in a cave, hidden, alone, raised by nymphs and fed goat's milk, while his father sat on a throne and his brothers and sisters rotted inside a Titan's stomach. Zeus spent his entire childhood knowing one thing. If his father ever found him, he would be swallowed alive, just like the others. That's not the origin of a king. That's the origin of a survivor. And survivors carry their fear with them forever, no matter how powerful they become. When Zeus was old enough, he didn't just walk up to Olympus and claim the throne. There was no throne to claim. The Titans ruled everything, and they were ancient, massive, and brutal. Zeus had to fight for it. First, he had to free his siblings. He found a way to make Cronus vomit. Some stories say it was a special drink, others say it was an herb. And one by one, the 5 swallowed children came back, alive somehow, changed but alive. Imagine what that reunion must have felt like. Brothers and sisters who had spent years in darkness, in the belly of their own father, suddenly free and blinking in the light. They were furious, all of them, and they wanted revenge. What followed was a war that lasted 10 years. 10 years. Not a battle, not a quick overthrow, a decade of violence so extreme that it shook the earth, cracked the sky, and split the mountains. The Titans fought with everything they had. The young gods fought with desperation. Zeus freed the Cyclops from the pit of Tartarus, and in return they forged him a weapon, the Thunderbolt. A weapon so powerful it could crack the sky. With it, Zeus could bring fire from heaven and shake the ground beneath his enemies. and eventually he won. The Titans were thrown into Tartarus, the deepest, darkest prison beneath the earth. The war was over. The old world was gone. Zeus and his brothers divided the universe between them. Poseidon took the seas, Hades took the underworld, and Zeus, the youngest, the one who had been hidden in a cave, took the sky, the highest place, the throne above everything. He had won. He was king. But winning didn't make the fear go away. This is where the story of Zeus becomes uncomfortable, because this is where he starts to become the thing he overthrew. Zeus knew what had happened to Cronus. He knew what had happened to Uranus before Cronus. There was a pattern. Father rules, son rises, father falls. Every generation, the same cycle. Power doesn't last, it gets taken. And Zeus was terrified that it would happen to him. This fear, this constant gnawing fear of being replaced, became the engine of almost everything Zeus did. It infected his relationships, his decisions, his very identity as a god. His first wife was Metis. She was the Titan goddess of wisdom, brilliant and powerful, and Zeus loved her. But then someone whispered a prophecy. Metis will bear a son who will be greater than his father, greater than Zeus.
The same prophecy, the same curse, father and son locked in an eternal cycle of destruction. And what did Zeus do? He swallowed her. While she was pregnant, he consumed his own wife the exact same way Cronus had consumed his children. Think about that. Zeus had spent his entire life defined by what his father did to his siblings. He had fought a 10-year war to stop that cruelty. And then, the moment he felt threatened, he did the exact same thing. Not because he was evil, because he was afraid. Fear doesn't make you brave. Fear makes you repeat the thing you ran from. Metis didn't die, though. She kept working inside Zeus's mind, and eventually their child, Athena, burst out of Zeus's head, fully formed, wearing armor, a goddess of wisdom born from a swallowed mother and a frightened father. Zeus let Athena live. She was a daughter, not a son. The prophecy said son, so she was safe. But the fear never left. Here's where people usually make a mistake about Zeus. They look at all his stories, the affairs, the disguises, the constant pursuit of women, and they see a powerful god doing whatever he wants. They see a king with no limits. But that's not what was happening. Zeus chased mortal women and nymphs and goddesses obsessively. He transformed into a bull, a swan, a shower of gold, an eagle, anything to get close to someone, to possess them, to create something new. He had children everywhere, dozens, maybe hundreds, with goddesses, with princesses, with servants. Every generation, more children scattered across the world. And people usually explain this by saying, well, that's just what the Greek gods were like. They had no morals. They did what they wanted. But there's another way to read it. Every child Zeus created was another link to the world, another piece of himself that would survive, another legacy that couldn't be swallowed, couldn't be erased, couldn't be thrown into the dark. Zeus wasn't just hungry for pleasure. He was hungry for permanence. He was building a world where he could never be forgotten, never be erased the way his father had tried to erase him. Because what happens when you grow up hidden in a cave? What happens when your earliest memory is the knowledge that your own father wanted to destroy you? You spend the rest of your life making sure you exist, loudly, visibly, everywhere. Every affair, every child,
every transformation, it was Zeus screaming at the universe, "I am here, I am real, you cannot make me disappear." And the disguises? People laugh about them. Zeus turning into a swan, Zeus turning into a bull, Zeus turning into a cloud of golden rain. It sounds ridiculous, almost comedic. But think about what a disguise really is. It's someone who doesn't believe they can be loved as themselves. Someone who hides their true face because they're convinced that who they really are isn't enough. Zeus, the most powerful god alive, didn't walk up to people as himself. He hid, he transformed, he became something else. The king of the universe, wearing masks. Just like the boy in the cave, staying invisible to survive. Some habits never die, they just get more elaborate. There's one story that reveals Zeus more than any other, and it's not about a love affair or a war. It's about fire. Prometheus was a titan, but one who had sided with Zeus during the war. He was clever, maybe the cleverest being alive, and he cared about humans. He saw them shivering in the dark, eating raw meat, dying of cold, dying of ignorance, and he decided to help them. He stole fire from the gods and brought it down to earth. Fire changed everything. With fire, humans could cook, they could forge metal, they could see in the dark, they could build civilizations. Fire was the first step toward everything humanity would become. And Zeus was furious, not because the fire was stolen, not because the rules were broken. Zeus was furious because Prometheus had given humans the ability to grow, to become something more, to stop being helpless creatures and start being creators, builders, thinkers. And what does a frightened king fear more than anything? People who don't need him anymore.
Zeus punished Prometheus in the worst way he could imagine. He chained him to a rock at the edge of the world, and every day an eagle would come and tear out his liver. Every night the liver would grow back, and the next morning the eagle would return. The same agony forever, with no end and no hope. That's not justice, that's rage. That's a man watching someone challenge the system he built to keep himself safe and losing control. Prometheus didn't threaten Zeus with violence. He didn't raise an army. He simply believed that humans deserved better, and for that, Zeus condemned him to an eternity of pain. Because fear doesn't just destroy the person who feels it, it destroys everyone around them. Now look at Zeus from above. Look at the shape of his life. He sits on the highest throne in the universe. He controls the weather, the law, the fate of nations. Every god reports to him. Every mortal prays to him. He is the most powerful being that has ever existed. And he is completely alone. His wife Hera hates him, not just because of the affairs, though that's part of it. She hates him because she sees what he is. She was one of the 5 children swallowed by Cronus. She spent years in darkness. She knows what fear does to a person, and she watches Zeus repeat the same patterns, the same destruction, the same betrayals, and she can't stop him. Hera doesn't rage because she's jealous. She rages because she's heartbroken. She married the man who freed her from a monster, and then she watched him slowly become one. His children are afraid of him, most of them. They've seen what happens when someone challenges Zeus. They've seen the thunderbolts, the punishments, the exile. Zeus was chained to a rock for eternity because he gave humans fire. Tantalus was thrown into a pool of water that recedes every time he tries to drink. Zeus doesn't just punish, he punishes forever. And his brothers? Poseidon rules the seas, but resents Zeus's authority. Hades rules the underworld and barely speaks to anyone.
The three brothers who once stood together against the Titans are now separated by water, by earth, by pride. Power didn't bring Zeus a family, it brought him subjects. And that's the loneliest thing in the world. At one point, and this is a myth that most people forget, the other gods tried to overthrow Zeus. Hera, Poseidon, and Athena conspired against him. They tied him up while he slept. The king of the gods, bound and helpless. It was a sea goddess, Thetis, who saved him. She called a 100-handed giant to free Zeus, and the rebellion collapsed. The conspirators were punished. Hera was hung from the sky with golden chains. Poseidon was forced to build the walls of Troy as a mortal laborer. But think about what that moment meant to Zeus. The people closest to him, his wife, his brother, his daughter, had looked at him and decided he needs to go. The same way Cronus had to go, the same way Uranus had to go. The cycle was still turning. After everything he had done, after every war and every child and every thunderbolt, the prophecy was still alive. Someone, someday, was going to try to take his place. Zeus had spent his life building defenses. He had the thunderbolt, he had the aegis, he had the loyalty of half the gods in the universe, but none of it mattered, because the threat didn't come from outside. It came from the people he ate dinner with, the people who shared his blood, the people who knew him best. That's what power does. It turns your family into your biggest threat. It makes you suspicious of everyone who gets close. It makes love feel like a risk and trust feel like a trap. And the most painful part? He couldn't even blame them, because he had done the same thing. He had looked at his own father and said, "You need to go." That's how power works. It creates the very thing that destroys it. So what was Zeus really? Not a hero, not a villain. Something more complicated and more human than either. Zeus was a child who was never safe. A boy who grew up knowing that his own father wanted him dead. A young man who fought a war not for glory, but for survival. A king who built an empire on top of a foundation of terror. And then he spent the rest of eternity trying to outrun the one thing he could never escape. The feeling that everything could be taken away in an instant, that someone was always coming, that the cave was always waiting.
Every thunderbolt he threw was Zeus saying, "I'm still here." Every law he made was Zeus saying, "The world needs order, because without it, fathers eat their children." Every child he fathered was Zeus saying, "Even if they take me down, some part of me will survive." He wasn't the god of the sky because he chose it. He was the god of the sky because it was the highest place, the farthest possible point from the cave where he was born, the farthest point from the stomach of a monster, the farthest point from fear. But you can't outrun what lives inside you. The Greeks didn't tell the story of Zeus because they admired him. They told it because they understood him. They understood what power does to people who are afraid. They understood that the strongest person in the room is often the most damaged. They understood that trauma doesn't disappear when you win, it just changes shape. Zeus was the king of the gods. He had everything. Lightning in his hand, the sky at his feet, an army of immortals at his command. And he was still the boy in the cave, still hiding, still running, still afraid that one day the darkness would swallow him whole. That's not the story of a god. That's the story of every person who has ever been hurt and then hurt someone else because they didn't know what else to do. Every person who climbed to the top of the mountain and realized the view didn't fix anything. Every person who built walls around themselves and called it strength. Zeus didn't need more power. He needed someone to tell him, "You're safe now. You don't have to fight anymore. You don't have to swallow anyone. You don't have to be your father." But nobody told him that, because everyone was too afraid of his lightning. And that might be the most tragic myth of all. Not Prometheus chained to a rock, not Orpheus losing Eurydice, not Achilles dying young. The most tragic myth is the most powerful being in the universe, sitting on a throne at the top of the world, surrounded by gods and storms and endless sky, and still feeling like a child alone in a cave, waiting to be found, waiting to be swallowed forever.
The next time someone tells you
Zeus was just a powerful god who did whatever he wanted, remember this: power without peace is just a louder kind of fear, and fear with a thunderbolt is the most dangerous thing in the world. The Greeks knew something we keep forgetting. They knew that the person at the top is not the freest person in the room. They're the most trapped, because everyone below them can look up and dream of climbing. But the person at the top, they can only look down, and all they see is how far there is to fall. Zeus had the sky, he had the lightning, he had everything the universe could offer. But he never had the one thing that would have saved him: peace. And that's why 3,000 years later, we're still telling his story. Not because he was a god, but because he was painfully, impossibly, heartbreakingly human.